Yeah, no, I'm in absolute agreement with you. And it's part of my passion in work that actually we provide those opportunities for women to become financially stable and independent. And we've got so many stories of that. So I'm really of the same mindset. How do you think that's more the way that you describe relationships working? Do you think that's more of a modern way? Because what I've seen recently is there's a real resurgence in more traditional masculine views. How do you relate to them personally?
Well, you've got your Andrew Tates of the world and people like that think, a woman should be his peace. I don't buy that. Yes, of course, there should be peace between both, his and hers. But again, with every relationship, understand who's doing what. Just be clear on it. When you see these guys say, man provides, woman stays home, does what he wants, when he wants, the way he wants. Well, the women that I know in my life and the mum that brought me up, my mum would be like, excuse me. I'm sorry, Mr. Tate, that won't be happening with us.
Mine too.
It just wouldn't be what it is. That's not happening. And so, I understand where he's coming from, and I understand that women have made the biggest rod for their own backs with femininity and
feminism.
Feminism, sorry. They've made a rod for their backs, and all these feminists out there that say they're feminists, most of them are hypocrites. Mm-hmm. They really are hypocrites because they don't describe feminism. They describe something else. If you want equality, then you can have it, but it comes in every form. Mm-hmm. Don't ask for equality in some things but not others. I want everything to be equal. Okay, fine. Then do everything equal. Pay for half of the rent if you want to be equal. Pay for half of the meal if you want to be equal. We don't want you to be equal. We would like to take care of you sometimes. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more chivalrous than a man feeling good about holding the door open for a lady. There's nothing nicer than a woman they're saying, thank you so much for buying it for dinner tonight. That was lovely. There's nothing nicer than, offering to buy a dress for somebody or an item. Could I buy you a dress? Okay. Or buying a dress and giving it to you as a gift, and seeing your face and being grateful you got it. It's when you see these other approaches of it needs to be equal, or that extreme aspect where the woman sits there expecting the man to give her everything. We go out for dinner, well, you're paying, okay. And she's on OnlyFans making $100,000 a month, and he's, working as a construction worker earning $5,000 a month, so he has to pay. It's like, I don't get this.
Yeah.
It's a logic. I'm old. Maybe I just don't understand it, but I'm old. And so my opinion at my age is, I suppose, different.
No, I'm totally with you on I do think feminism has a lot to answer for in a negative way. I think that the fight for female rights has almost, where is man's place? Like, what is it we're trying to achieve? Coming back to what you said, what is the purpose of this action? What are you actually fighting for on a broader scale? And is it achieving that? Taking a step back to actually reflect and say, is this creating the unity with another? If it's not creating unity with men, why are you still doing it? Why are you still beating down that drum? And what are you trying to fight for? And I love what I heard you say in a podcast that I listened to of yours, where you said that men shouldn't get married until they're 40. Can you tell me about that?
A couple of things. First of all, just to preface what I said before, I have 2 daughters that are adults. I never want them to rely on a man. I want them to be independent.
Right.
Okay, that's what I want for them. I don't want them to be in a position where they rely on a man. So for people out there, remember I have 2 daughters, and so, I'm not some macho dude that's trying to put something down. I have 2 daughters. I don't believe men are mature enough and know enough about the world and themselves, and that's why I think they shouldn't get married until they're older. Now I know there's lots of successful marriages where people got married at 21 and yada yada yada. But we have to look at the data, and the vast majority, so over 50% of marriages end in divorce. Over 50% of marriages end in divorce. So we've got to understand why that happens. And that's because I believe a lot of the time people make bad decisions because they don't know themselves, or they don't know what they're getting into, or they don't understand the commitment. And so if men were not allowed to get married until they were 40, maybe they'd be marrying women there was a bigger age gap between, maybe 5 or 10 years age gap. Because I think women
mature
at 30. I think and overall, and that's a vast generalization because there's a load of immature women as well, but women at 30 and men at 40, I think if that makes more sense to me, because the woman's got through the experiences she needs to have and kind of found herself and established herself. The man's done that as well. And by 40, generally, they'd have built themselves some form of career and some element of security. And then they can bring a family up knowing much more. I got married at 26. Stupid. I got divorced at 31. And I was married for 5 years, all in all. And it was, a really bad decision for both of us. And making that bad decision didn't help me. It crippled me financially at the time. After 5 years of being married, I gave most of what I ever made away. And that's because I remember walking down the aisle thinking, am I doing the right thing here? Because I didn't know. And I was kind of ushered along by the enthusiastic audience that were there and the parents that were encouraging you to make these types of decisions and grow up, settle down, have a family, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think you can do all of that. But, you have to consider life expectancy was so much. 100 years ago, people didn't live as long. 200 years ago, they lived even less. So, there's a good chance most people being born today will live to 100 or more. So having a family at 40 still means 60 years, isn't it?
That's a really great point. So would you be saying to your daughters they shouldn't even consider marriage till they're 40?
Hell no. Not 40, 30.
30, but yeah, their partners.
I mean, I had a really interesting situation. My youngest, who's 21, said to me, "Oh, Dad, I've got a new boyfriend. Can I tell you about him?" I'm like, "I don't want to know." I said, "You've only been seeing him for a couple of months. It's not really relevant. When it's serious, then we'll have a conversation." And I flew back to Dubai, and my eldest, Taylor, said to me, Katie's got a new boyfriend. I'm like, "Yeah, well, I've heard, yeah." She said, "He's 35. And I was like, "Excuse me? What do you mean he's 35? She's 21. She goes, "Yeah, I know, he's 35. I'm like, "He's 35. And she's 21. So I messaged her. I said, "Hey," because I call her Poochie. "Hey, Poochie, that new boyfriend you've got, how old is he?" She said 35. And I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Dad, you told me you weren't interested. You didn't want to know." Which was right.
Fair.
So it came as a bit of a shock to me. But I suppose what is age really? All it is varying levels of maturity for people. And we've all made enough. I think when you're 40 or when you're 30 as a woman, you've made enough bad decisions to know what a good decision is.
You've made enough interesting decisions.
Challenging.
Interesting. I'm like, that was an interesting season. I try not to use the bad. Interesting.
I bet you've had a few of those.
But a few interesting situations. Seasons, yeah. Moments in life. Yeah.
I'm not going to make eye contact with you now as the tumbleweed goes through.
So what was the biggest thing you learned or some of the biggest lessons from being divorced and then remarrying, like about relationships and what successful relationships look like or need to have as components?
Okay, so I believe a successful relationship, it's critical that you have shared values. I think that is the number one aspect. You must care about the same things. If you don't, then there's a disinterest in each other's feelings and emotions, and when there's a disinterest in that can lead to something pulling apart quite easily. I want everybody to, and this is why I think this whole kind of Indian arranged marriage thing, although when I was young I used to laugh at it, but now I understand it better. It makes a lot of sense. So you think about this. Let's say you and I are both single, okay? We meet each other in a whatever environment, a networking event, and we start dating, and 3 years later we get engaged. So let's just say that happens. Who has done the research on you to find out whether you're good for me? And who has done the research on me to find out whether I'm good for you? No one. We're going by our own instincts, our own intuition, our own self-perceived knowledge of being a good judge of character. Okay, I'm a good judge of character. And you say that when you're young. As you get older, you say, I'm a terrible judge of character. I get it wrong. But then you see this Indian arranged marriage thing. And now you've got, so if it was my family, it would be my mum and my dad and my sisters and my step-parents. And maybe, no, not because I've got kids, but those people, the sisters and the step-parents and the parents, would be literally my team of people that were going to find somebody for me that they know I would like and would have the same values. When you think about that for a minute, if you've got a team of people behind you doing some research and suggesting people to, this person's good for these reasons, Spence. Sarah, this person's good for these reasons. What do you think? No, I don't like that. But okay, right, let's go to the next one. I believe having a team around you to help you choose the right person and a mother who knows you best to go, not him.
Yeah.
Not that one. Okay. Or dad to go, I'm not entirely sure he's the right guy for you, Sarah. I think that would be awesome. And that's why I think we see less divorces in India than we do in the Western world.
Yeah.
Now, people will argue those relationships stay for a longer time and maybe they lose some of their energy. But I'd much rather marry someone knowing that everyone thought that person was right for me. Because what is a relationship at the beginning anyway? It's infatuation. People think it's love. I'm in love. I fell in love with her. How long have you been seeing her? 3 weeks. You didn't fall in love with anyone.
No.
You got swept away by your excitement and your infatuation. And that probably lasts a couple of years in reality. We can say it's love, but really? Because, we're still obsessed with how hot they are and what stuff we're going to do. And, once you've gone down the road a few years and you get past all that kind of stuff and you see what they look like without the makeup on and you see, you see bed hair and all that kind of stuff and how they growl and how they argue and how they complain and how they eat. There's another thing, sat down. He's in there.
Brilliant one.
Unbelievable. You sat there looking in their eyes. You're just like, oh, God. Or holding the knife and fork like that. Ooh. One of my pet hates. How tidy, how messy they are, or how they treat a traffic warden, or how they look at a child on the street, or how they look at an animal that's mistreated. All this kind of stuff comes out over time. Having a team behind me, I think, makes a whole load of sense because I don't think we can do it on our own effectively all the time.